Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Breakfast and Combos. I am Liberty White, video marketing specialist.
And I am T. Adeola, digital marketing expert who sits at the intersection of digital marketing, media, and how it's transforming business and life.
Now, T, we're just coming off of the long weekend. How was your long weekend? Because I have
My
to.
long weekend was a mess. I'm not even going front. It was just a hot mess. It's been monsooning here in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Cincinnati almost never, like just southwestern Ohio in general, almost never floods. Like we had the Great Flood back in like 1919 or something like that,
Okay.
like literally 100 years ago. But generally speaking, southwestern Ohio doesn't flood. It has been the wettest,
Ooh.
most miserable May I can remember. And we got flash floods. I'm on my phone right now. My computer spazzed out on me, but I couldn't even take it to Micro Center immediately because Micro Center flooded. And so I had
Oh,
to
wait.
wait to drop
You
it off to
meant
Micro Center.
you meant
Yeah,
like water, because I remember I got your
water.
message where you said it was flooded, and I thought, much like some of these companies where they're like flooded with business, like they can't.
No.
Oh, wow.
I'm in
Okay.
natural disaster, as in water in the building. So like we got plagues, we got killer wasps. Now it's flooding. I'm just
Okay.
hoping that the zombies don't come at this point. That's all I'm hoping. Yes, you just put it back
And you
there.
know
Thank
what?
you.
It's that's a lot. And then I hear Oliver out there
Good
this
morning. Come on,
morning.
say
Good
hi.
morning, Oliver. And for any of you who are watching, so Breakfast and Convos, we keep it all the way real, as professional as we are, as digital marketing, video marketing, and just in that whole business space. We're parents doing a show
Yeah.
in the midst of COVID-19, working from home. So
hmm
good morning, Oliver. How are
And
you?
he found a cassette tape somewhere, and so now he's prompt. I don't know where he found this, and now he's prompt. Now he wants to listen to it, and he found it in the box. Yes, and so now he wants to listen to it, and who has a cassette player? So it's just one of those cool things. Daddy is almost done. Give Daddy a few more
Oh
minutes,
man, that
and
is
Daddy
a
will come
cassette
out. Okay.
player, bringing it all the way
Thank you.
back. That
Okay.
is so cute.
Go out to the
Well,
couch and watch your show. Daddy will be
hopefully
back. Okay.
things with Micro Center and your computer, get straight. But the beautiful thing about the times that we live in is that you are able to still continue the show, most importantly, still continue work in life based
Yeah.
off of your ability to use that device.
Yeah. True story. And so that was my weekend. How was your weekend?
And I just want to take a moment to say, good morning to everybody watching. We do broadcast live each and every Tuesday and Thursday on LinkedIn Live. And I see that Martin is up with us this morning. Good morning, Martin. Oh, and Martin is awesome. I'm appreciative of.
Louisville, Kentucky, not that far away. Good morning.
Yeah,
Good morning.
he is. He's right around the corner from you. I'm
hmm
appreciative of everyone who tunes in and sends us feedback, because as I said, this show was designed for our community and for us to not only bring news and information, but also bring people on the show that can speak to where you are and where you want to go in the digital landscape and even in tech and in business. So I'm looking forward to James Oliver coming up shortly. And I know that's not the question that you asked me. You asked me how was my weekend. My weekend was well. I have some pitch proposals that I had to work on, so I'm grateful for that. And it was interesting. This
Nice.
wasn't your regular holiday weekend, because it's like we've been home and we're at home. So what's the big extra stuff? But just having a day to just pause, and the little one is now school's over, so figuring out that space and then balancing all the things that I still have to do. But the highlight of my weekend was the versus battle on Saturday night.
Yeah. That was hot, right? That was hot. I
Yes.
was feeling it. Yes,
If
three horn 3 times. Like we got to get that sound.
we have to get
Yes.
sound effects on the show now because of that. For those of you who are not familiar with Versus, it is an online experience that takes place on Instagram, and it was created by Swiss Beats and Timbaland. They're both producers, music veterans, and they started this competition between producers, songwriters with a deep catalog, where essentially they will share. They go pound for pound, just sharing this hit, telling a little story about what went into the production or some of the things behind the scenes that we don't actually, if it hasn't been shared in an interview already, we get that inside scoop from them. And this weekend they went all the way to Jamaica, and because I'm Jamaican, so that's a little bit part of it, the Jamaican side of it, but they went to Jamaica and it was with Bounty Killer and Beanie Man. And I'm saying that
Beanie Man all the way. Beanie won, by the way. And for those who didn't win, like I'm just calling it. We all biased, but Beanie won. But continue.
So, and I would tend to agree, but the entire experience was so good that it's just like, who was keeping score. But yes, I know there are some faithful folks that were, but the reason I bring this up, not only because of what I did this weekend, was the production value was insane. And you think like, it's Instagram, right? So what does that really matter? And it being the fact that, one, I was concerned of them being in Jamaica and what that could have meant for the internet, because historically on these battles, there are connectivity issues and that's them being here in America. So you go to Jamaica and I'm like, okay, how is this going to work out? But they did a live stream for 2 hours uninterrupted. Besides, Instagram's algorithm cuts you off. I'm not the algorithm, but it cuts you off after an hour. But I was like, they were uninterrupted. The quality was great. The performance was great. There wwas so many checks for them. And you could see afterwards, like, people are still talking about the battle. People are still talking about the production, the entertainment. And what I love, so the woman who brought that together her name is Sharon Burke. And she's been doing a bunch of interviews. And as a producer, as a tech, just a part of the culture, I've been following her. And Sharon, I'm saying this right now for anybody in Jamaica or anybody here in the US, that she's going to be on this show or some way, somehow, that I will interview her, we'll get her on, because they rehearsed. She shared in an interview, they rehearsed for 3 days. So they turned this around in about a week, but they rehearsed for 3 days. And what it is when you've got a big project, you've got a big presentation, you put that work in. And
absolutely.
Previously, I don't know how many of the other artists, how much testing, and because that's the critical part. When you are live streaming, you've got to do that put in the work to make sure that functionally what devices, because if anything can go wrong, it will go wrong, especially with tech. So it was just a phenomenal experience. And I could go on, but I won't, because you've got some news to talk to us about Twitter.
I do, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. It was the best, by the way. And I am not Jamaican, but I do love Beanie Man. Like I've been rocking with Beanie since forever. Back when he did that joint with Maya about, I take the stars. I've been hooked ever since. That's my cut, right?
Okay.
And so rum and Red Bull, whenever I need to get hype on the I'm drinking rum and Red Bull. That's my cut. Anyway, enough singing.
You never know what can happen on this show, because it's all about the culture and marketing. We fuse them together. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Twitter has been busy this month of May, and they have a lot going on. So the first thing that they did is they're trying to bring a little civility to the platform, because as everyone watching this broadcast, I'm sure is aware, it gets savage on Twitter. like Twitter is not the place to go if you are of faint of heart and don't do well with controversy or feedback, because it gets real on Twitter. So what Twitter is doing right now, is something they've tested is prompting people. Not that one, Liberty.
Okay.
That's the next story, but the I think it's the first one I sent you. They're about to yes, that one.
Ah,
So
yes.
they are prompting people to rethink. Hold on for a sec. Hold on for a sec. They are prompting people to rethink potentially offensive tweets. So,
Oh,
like I said, it gets really wild and really raw on Twitter, and it's a savage environment. So much so that a lot of people have left the platform or just can't deal with the negativity
right,
and the vitriol that goes like. And this is a civility is an issue for social media in general, but
right.
it gets especially raw on Twitter. So now, thank you. Now they are in the process of testing this to
Okay.
see whether or not they can, try to tone that down, especially as we approach the November election, presidential election here in the U.S. Because few things get as savage as politics. So, Liberty, what are your thoughts on this move by Twitter to try to bring some stability to their platform?
I think overall, it's a good move, good idea. As you said, that there's so much that can go down on Twitter. In the same breath, I can hear people talking about their freedom of speech and just going down that path. So it'll be interesting to see how that plant pans out, and especially just thinking even about maybe even some of the AI stuff that might go behind the scenes, where things that might have been misconstrued or contextually. I'm definitely on the fence, but I'm interested. Definitely interested.
Same here. I had very much the same reaction because my knee jerk was satire. Like some comedians, they say they be like take Dave Chappelle, right? If
Yeah.
you were to take some of the things that Dave Chappelle says out of context, you would think he's just this awful human being.
Right.
However, it's Dave Chappelle, and he's a professional comedian. Satire is what he does for a living. So I'm with you on that one. We'll again we'll see how it goes because I think we're all in agreement that a little civility is not a bad thing, but when you enter artificial intelligence, that's when it gets a little murky. And
Right.
so the other tab, the one that you had on the first time,
Yep.
Twitter is going to start adding labels to information that has been disputed about COVID-19. So misinformation, hashtag fake news, whatever you want to call it, it's a big problem. It's a very big issue, especially in the context of COVID-19, because if you get some wrong information about COVID-19, you could die. I mean, let's cut the crap and go. Like, if,
Like
if
both
if you're
ways.
out
Like,
here,
yes.
yeah, like if you're out here acting like it's not serious, and it is because you read a bad blog post or you read some misinformation, that could be the last thing you ever do. And
Yeah.
so, something that Twitter has begun doing is they have begun putting labels on tweets about stories that have been disputed, from um, taking a page from Facebook, who has done something similar on their platform. And what Facebook has seen is that whenever they label something as disputed, that post, the clicks reduce by about 95%. So people
Mm,
don't actually click on it. So I think it's a step in the right direction. However, just because people click on it doesn't mean it doesn't spread. And
that's
what they haven't reported on is how much it gets shared. But anyway, thoughts?
so when you brought in the Facebook aspect of things, I know that across the board, everyone is buckling down. They're buckling down on security, they're buckling down on spam and that kind of content that would be misconstrued. I'm kind of slightly more excited about this one, or feeling better. Let me say it that way. I feel a little bit better about this one, especially because of the implications of having the wrong information. And especially
Yep.
since, like, when you look at all of the platforms, that's where people go for news. So being that news first site, I understand that they need to take greater precautions. My thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree 100%. And last but not least, before we get to our amazing guest, Twitter just made a recent acquisition. Twitter bought Mobile Focus DSP, which stands for Demand Side Provider. So you have the supply side and then you have the demand side, right? Like economics 101, supply and demand. So a DSP is a demand side provider. They just bought demand side provider cross install
Mhm.
because they're prioritizing the performance of their ads because COVID-19, as we discussed on the podcast the last several weeks, COVID-19 has accelerated trends. They've really accelerated trends, and one
Very
of the
much so.
beneficiaries of those trends has been gaming and apps. Like
Mm.
gaming and apps are what has held YouTube up. YouTube eked out a 1% gain while everybody else tanked, right? And they did that on the back of apps and gaming. So Twitter's no slouch in this area, and they made this acquisition to really bolster their portfolio, specifically in the app ecosystem. And so I think it was a smart move. I think it makes a lot of sense in the context that we're in. Um, what are your thoughts?
On this one, I think it's a win.
Yeah,
I think it's a win.
one.
This is that time in space where if you thought about selling your company, that this could be a good move because the bigger, the higher ups, or even if it's mergers to strengthen your brand, those are typically I'll say a win. But we'll see what James has to say about that.
Yeah, because he has a lot to offer in that space, and I tend to agree because, like we said, the trends, everything has been accelerated in this space, and this is one of them. And yeah, they accepted the offer, so it was good enough to be accepted. But I am so looking forward to our guest this morning because, as we've seen in the broadcast, my 4-year-old is his, precocious self, and just life in general right now is something that I'm struggling right along with all of my other parentpreneurs. And so we have a special guest for you guys, Mr. James Oliver from WeMontage and Trip Life. Who's going to say it for me? Trip Life Dad.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Is that it? Thank you. It's been a long morning. But James, welcome to the show.
Delighted to be here. Thanks so much for having me. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Awesome.
You have been, let me just take a moment to say before we get into the interview, you have been a day one fan that we rely on you. We appreciate you. So no, seriously, we
Yeah.
want to thank you for because we're a morning show. We're up early in the morning, and it's not a small thing to engage it. And you have twins, you have a family, and so the amount of support that you've given this young show has not gone unnoticed and
Oh, cool, man. I appreciate it.
So
I
you are
appreciate it.
sir.
Happy to engage, to watch, to contribute, to share, all that.
Yeah, your
For
feedback
sure.
and comments, just even during when Shyla was on, many shows, but I remember specifically that one just because she was, and I'm going to get ahead for a second and go back to so we can really get into the beginning of your story,
Sure.
but just even her fundraising and these funds we've spoken almost on every episode about funding and being a business owner and the people's access to actually getting some of the PPP loans or the other programs that are out there that you might not qualify for. So we're excited to hear about your journey. And yeah, I think that's a great place to start of how did you get into entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Oh boy. How much time we got?
Right.
The floor is yours. Right.
It started before high school. I was just entrepreneurial, always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. Went to college. I went to Morehouse. And back then, me and a couple of buddies, we had a little production company and we were doing really innovative and interesting things with entertainment. And, I heard somebody else talking about this recently. When we don't really do what we're supposed to be doing and we make other choices, I was an accounting major, I was top of my class, but I hated it.
Right.
but I had my friend Tess chiming in there. Jimbo, hey Tess. But I hated it, you know, but I had a great job lined up at an accounting firm. I wanted to change my major and do something I thought was a little bit more consistent with my demeanor or temperament, but that was frowned upon by some, you know, folks in my family. So I ended up, you know, really, I think, getting in the wrong lane. But I don't so much, yeah, I don't dwell on that because, you know, I'm in the right lane now, and that's all that matters, because the only thing that matters is right now, right? What'd you say? Can I hear you?
Oh no, yeah, we can hear you. We can hear
Okay.
you.
All right, cool. So, you know, it was back in 2011, 2010, 2011, watching an interior design show on HGTV, and really just decided they were in a family's basement covering the walls with these big, beautiful collages. And I had these amazing pictures that I wanted to display in my house this way. They called it photo wallpaper. And I was like, oh my God, this is super cool. It's a proverbial aha moment with the angels singing, the clouds parting. It was like that. And I was like, you know what, dang it. Like, I'm just going to be what I am. Like, this is what I came here to do, to be an entrepreneur. And, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So that's how I ended up down the entrepreneurial path with respect to WeMontage.
Cool. Very nice. Thank you for and that was my son chiming in earlier.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
he came in and asked for
I
something.
thought that was
So I
literally
had to
something like, huh?
go on mute real quick. James, like this dadpreneur life, like it's not for the faint of heart, my man. So and I just want to thank you for your blog and the things that you've shared on it, because I was telling Liberty a little bit before you came on. I haven't been feeling like enough lately. I have 3 children by 2 different women. I don't have custody of either of my children, but my youngest is with me for the next 3 weeks. He's staying with me for a month. And just, you know, the dynamic that brings about the type of life you want to provide that you're not necessarily in a position to, not to mention like getting to know my son again, because I hadn't seen him for a year. This is the first time I've seen him since last April. I was supposed to see him this past April for his birthday. His birthday is April 26th, but I wasn't able to because of COVID-19. So that's why he's staying with me for an entire month, just, you know, try to make up that time. But it's a lot. It's a whole lot. So talk a little bit about how you manage that day with twins, folks. Twins. I had 3 babies, but it was one at a time. Like they spaced out. He had 2 at once, which is, God bless you, my friend.
So, you know, that's interesting. So at the time when I was working on WeMontage, my now ex-wife decided, you know, she wanted to have children. So we did IVF, and we put in 2 embryos, and they both took, you know, and we did that just from a probability standpoint to increase the chance of actually having 1 baby, but they both took. And the kids were supposed to be born at the end of March. I was working my tail off, living in the middle of nowhere in Northeast Wisconsin, 1,000 miles away from family and friends. And the kids were born, they were born 3 months early. They only weighed 2 pounds apiece. And this happened 2 days before I was beginning a startup accelerator, which was a 2-hour drive each way.
Wow.
Right. So think about that.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm in this accelerator, and I'm back and forth to the NICU, and really just grinding to get a minimum viable product built in time for demo day, to raise capital, because I was trying to raise capital. I know you want to talk about raising capital. You know, you reach out to investors, they don't know you. I'm living in a place where there wasn't exactly that robust of an ecosystem from that standpoint. And I was getting like 0 traction. I think I tried an Indiegogo campaign. That didn't work. So for me, I felt like the only way I was going to be able to have any credibility, to have a chance to talk to investors where they would listen, was to get into the accelerator. So thankfully I got into the accelerator, you know, but those were some really challenging times. I was waking up every morning at probably like 2 a.m. just from the stress of it all. I mean, I was crying every day. If you could have walked up and said, "Hey, good morning, James, how you doing?" I would have started crying. You know, my skin was breaking out from the stress of it all. I had a super talented developer on my team, but he had some personal demons that made him like really unreliable. I was looking to raise $250,000, and you know, they would take us around to various angel investors and angel investor groups during the program. And I remember the day, like it was right before I was going on stage for demo day. This was like early April 2013. My phone rang. I got a call from one of the investor groups that we pitched. And he said, "Hey man, we're going to fill your entire round." I'm like, "What? Is it 250?" He said, "Yeah." I just got on my knees and thank God. And I think I'll probably cry.
Nice. That's amazing. And just the mental toughness and endurance is really hard. And again, thank you, Martin, for your comment about the time with my son. I do appreciate that. That means a whole lot. So yeah, man, you've been through it, and you most recently got the opportunity to interview one of the bona fide big dogs in space, Seth Godin.
Yeah.
But before that, a quick story about how Seth Godin helped me get a life lesson from my aunt. So I was this was a couple years ago. I was staying with my aunt, and we was watching this episode of Black Mirror. It was early, like maybe the second or third episode, where it was the one where at birth you get this implant behind your ear. Like it's just like a little dime-sized implant behind your ear, but it records everything you see. And everything that you see, you can play it back in your head, like on your eye, or you can put it on the screen, and everything you see is recorded. So anyway, the main character in this episode, his wife is cheating on him, and he's a lawyer by trade, so he's good about piecing things together. And when he figures out his wife is cheating on him, he handles the situation poorly. He gets drunk, drives over to the dude's house, beats him up, and then he comes back to the house, and he essentially browbeats his wife into showing him the act of her cheating on him.
Oh, wow.
And so after that, he had seen too much. And so he goes in the bathroom, takes a razor blade, he cuts out the little implant and, pulls out the wires. And so this sparked not vicious, but a very impassioned debate between my aunt and I, because at the time I was on his side 100%. I was like, that tramp was cheating on him. She tried to gaslight him. That wasn't his baby. She played him. Blah, blah. And I was in his corner 100%. But she was like, no, even if you're in a bad situation, that does not give you the right to behave badly. And he handled the situation poorly, and there's no excuse for the way that he behaved. And then tying it all back to Seth Godin, one of the things that he's famous for is that he is not a fan of competing on price, because he describes that as a race to the bottom.
Oh,
and what he
absolutely
says is, the thing about a race to the bottom is that you just might win. And so how that helped me digest what my aunt was saying to me is that, when things heat up, we use the term escalate, right? Like we things are escalating, which describes an ascension. However, when you view it through the lens of the collateral damage and the toll it's taking on your relationship, you're not escalating, you're racing to the bottom. And the thing about a race to the bottom is that you just might win. And so I was able to, two completely different things, but after, and I forget why I was reading Seth Godin at the top, but when I, hey baby, come on, when I was able to piece that together, he really helped me get that lesson. So, and I know your post about Seth Godin, you intentionally did not, hold on for just a sec. You intentionally did not ask a bunch of the same, this is real life, folks. This is the dad trap life. Give me a sec. We're almost done, okay? So talk a little bit about that experience and that journey, about how you finally got Seth on the line, and what it was like to talk to, one of the OGs in the game.
Yeah,
Well,
no, it was great.
if I could jump in for a second, even before Seth, you had like, I guess if we're saying OGs and some of the folks who have
Right.
been doing it, it was Mark Cuban, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So yeah, so just circle back a little bit. So I'm starting a foundation. I think you touched on this a little bit, to provide, the vision is we're going to give $10,000 grants. I want to give $10,000 grants to 100 people globally who are parentpreneurs. So that's $1 million a year. And then for another 900 people, we want to wrap them around in some real meaningful resources to help them with their businesses and with their parenting. So in the process of leading up to all that, I just decided to do something different on my blog and really interview remarkable people who are parents and entrepreneurs, or parentpreneurs, as I call it. So I sent a cold email to Mark Cuban, and in that article, so the blog is, you can type in TrepDad, TrepDad, and it will take you to the blog. And in the article with Cuban, I talked about how I was able to connect with him. And in my books, I'm also a published author and an award-winning writer. My book is called The More You Hustle, The Luckier You Get. You Can Be a Successful Parentpreneur, and that's available at Amazon. So I wrote that book to inspire the millions of parentpreneurs around the world to be the best possible parent and entrepreneur they can be. And so I'm gonna bounce around a little bit here, but hang with me because I'm gonna come back full circle to it. But you asked me about entrepreneurship. To me, that step to entrepreneurship led me to what I think is my purpose in life, which is what I just said, to inspire the millions of parentpreneurs around the world to be the best possible parent and entrepreneur they can be. So, you got the business, you got the blog, then the book, and now the foundation. And leading up to that, I'm just like, all right, so I'm just transforming my blog a little bit right now. I just want to interview really inspiring people. Because for me, it takes the same amount of energy to send an email to Mark Cuban as it does to Mark Williams, whoever that is, right? So why not send the cold email to Mark Cuban? Because the impact when you get a yes, because eventually, if you keep doing dope stuff, eventually you'll get to a yes, right?
Right.
So I might as well spend my time on things that when I get to yes will have impact. So in that article, I gave 3 tips for how to effectively send a cold email, which is really important right now because people communicate asynchronously. They're not going to answer their cell phone if they don't recognize the number. If you leave a voicemail, they're most likely not going to check. I don't check my voicemails 75% of the time.
Right.
And you need to know how to send somebody an email, which starts with a compelling subject line. If you put the person's name in the email subject line, I think in the article I said, Campaign Monitor said it's like a 26% increase in the open rate. Make sure the email is short to the point. Make sure you understand who their audience is. Be relevant. Be concise. Don't send a novel-length email. Nobody wants to read a novel-length email. Right. So, that's what I did. And Mark's just such a great guy. It was amazing. I emailed him an hour later. He was like, okay. Okay.
And he's been on this, like on Twitter, and he's been a big supporter of people who he's saying, hey, he's connecting banks with people who are tweeting that they haven't got their PPP loans. They're not getting their funding. So he's actively supporting people. Yes.
And the other thing is, right now, and I said this in an article, people are available, they're approachable, they're accessible. Like, shoot your shot.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for? This is the time right now. If there's something you want to do, somebody you want to connect with, go for it. Do it now. Don't wait. Do it.
That's a great segue, because one of the questions we do have, and there are people who have, we say this on most shows, especially because we do broadcast primarily on LinkedIn, is that there are people who are either furloughed, or they've lost their job, or they realize that this is a time for a shift, and they are thinking about, okay, let me start that passion project. Or what advice would you give to someone on how to start?
Yeah, let's get started. Like what? Do you have an idea? Okay, perfect. Why don't you build something that's the minimum MVP, minimum viable product? It's going to scale down version of that. And I love how Seth Godin in that article yesterday, in the bottom, I included some links to an Inc. article where he was talking about a minimum viable audience. I was like, what? I'm like, oh, this is so dope, right? That's the fewest amount of people you need to actually crush what you want to do.
Right.
So just build something, present it to people who you think should care or would care about it, and figure out if they would pay for it, right? Get some feedback, and then go back and make it better and show it to them again. And then I loved in that article you're showing right now with Seth Godin, how he talks about the first question I asked. Yeah, and you're right. I intentionally didn't want to ask him a bunch of marketing questions because, I mean, right? Okay, so first of all, I agonized over these questions for that article. Let me tell you, right?
Imagine.
No, I did. So first I was trying to take these interviews that he recently did on Inc. around COVID-19, and I'm trying to be like super clever, and how can I like build upon his answers in a meaningful way that, and I'm just like, I went back, I came up with my questions, and we were looking at these questions like, wait, like he's already answered these questions. Like, whatever, like anybody he could go see that someplace. Let's try to get into his head a little bit and to explore and bring out the humanity of Seth Godin. And I think that's what we did with some of his answers and some of those questions. But he talked about the first question was, what's the biggest mistake you see solopreneurs make? Because you're talking about somebody at home right now just trying to get going with something.
Right.
And he talked about the mistake that people make with marketing. People think marketing is advertising, and we need to be trying to make things that people want and communicate it in the way to them that they care about and that they want to talk about. It's just really kind of simple as that. And he said, if you get that right, everything else will take care of itself, which I thought was a really good answer.
I love that. And the care that you took in your questions showed. Like I've been at this for a while now. I had a podcast all of 2017 where I interviewed some really, big names in the space as well. And I can tell a good interviewer when I see one.
Oh, bro. We tossed out a bunch of questions and started over.
And that is, and like T said, just asking those. And I think that's what makes your Trep Life Dad, that blog and that space, because the questions that you're asking are not just coming from the, fan person or just someone who's just trying to get FaceTime, but it's actual like real, valuable and tangible. That's the biggest thing. Anything we work on, we try to make sure, even bring you on the show, it was like, okay, can you make sure you've got some tips for people? Because now, fluff is one thing. You can get fluff anywhere, but when you can walk away, right?
Nobody cares. And
you walk away with those tangible points to say, this is how I can go to the next steps.
That's right. So if you want to talk about tips, one of the things that people always want to ask me, so my business, WeMontage.com, what's Stephanie saying? Exactly. I met Stephanie dropping the kids off at daycare. She was wearing an Atlanta Startup Battle t-shirt. I'm like, wait, what? To the who? Like, I just moved back to Atlanta. I'm like, what?
Okay.
So that's how I connected with Stephanie. But people always want to ask me, hey man, how'd you get your business on it? I got my business, WeMontage.com, which is the world's only website that turns your digital images into peel and stick photo wallpaper. Innovative, brilliant product, but it hasn't crossed the chasm yet. But that's a conversation for another day. But it's a brilliant product. So how I got on the Today Show 3 times, Good Morning America, Money Magazine, Martha Stewart's blog 3 times, CNET.com, on and on and on, without paying a publicist to help with that. So I'm like, listen, you have the ability to get PR for your business on your own without paying a publicist. That's not to say publicists are not valuable, because they are. I work with a fair number of publicists, and on my own, I did better. I did. And so it's 3 tips.
Why do you think that is?
Well, because as a founder, nobody can speak as passionately about your business and authentically. It's interesting. That interview with Seth Godin's got me rethinking the word authentically when I was looking at some of his content over on Inc. It's not good to be authentic. It's good to be a good human. But that's a conversation for another day as well. Because like you're authentic, but you're a jerk. Like, yeah, you're authentically a jerk, right? Like nobody wants to be around a jerk. So the 3 tips are, if I could remember them, you got to learn how to send cold emails. I already talked about that, Yeah, I mean, you could pick up my book. I talk about that. How cold email got me featured on CNET.com. We made $7,000 from one cold email I sent. You could Google how to send cold emails. There's tons of resources out there for that. You need to build a community before you need it.
Oh, that is a good one. I remember a former employer a long time ago. That was one of his things. It's like it was a national publication, but his ability to build relationships with people,
Yeah.
phenomenal. And like you
Yeah.
said, build it before you need it, because then when that ask comes, and since we are again on various platforms, but we are on LinkedIn,
That's
even
right.
up to last week, I accepted their invitation, and the first thing that they sent me was a pitch. And I asked them, I don't typically do this, but I asked them, I said, is this a bot? Like, so it wasn't, and I say that for anyone who's watching and not familiar with that terminology, like, is this like an automated response that comes through? And they're like, no, this is me. I'm just sharing what you do and what I do. And I just found that interesting, because this is like the first time you're connecting versus, as you said, the tip of building a community before you need it.
Yeah, because if you're in LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups and you're constantly engaging and sharing and giving, when you go in and have an ask, people will be very happy to help you, because you're not just like taking all the time. Right. And so the third tip is you have to use tools. So there's one like Press Farm. There's some other ones, but Press Farm is an affordable one. If you want to find out who's talking about your space, and once you find out who's talking about your space and you get to them by email, so I think Press Farm may actually provide the email. I don't know, but you could Google email the contact info, and then there's a contact out. Is a Chrome extension that you can actually use to scrape anybody's email address, or almost anybody's email address, in LinkedIn. Ooh, I use that tool. I sent Oprah and her assistant a cold email, and you know what? Her assistant gets back to me now. Right? It costs money, but they have like a free trial with that thing. So use it, try about 75% of the time it works. It shows you their email. Sometimes it shows their phone number. What? It's crazy. So you just got to be creative. Build a community before you need it. Use tools to figure out who's talking about your space, and learn how to send cold emails. Those are my 3 tips. That's like $100,000. No, for real.
Consulting,
on the low end. I mean, James,
for real.
we gotta have you back, because you kept saying there's a conversation for another. That we're going to have those conversations.
Right,
Don't you worry, folks. So James, man, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for your time. Please drop your social media handles, email address. How can people get more of you?
Yeah, so I'm on IG. I'm at Trepdad, TREPDAD. If you want to drop that in, Liberty. I'm not on Twitter that much. I don't get Twitter, man, but that's another story too. But I'm at James Oliver Jr. James Oliver Jr. on Twitter. Yeah, I'm on James Oliver Jr. on LinkedIn. I'm more active on LinkedIn. Yeah, I think that's the good ways to get me. Pretty responsive, like you, like, just don't come at me sideways, right?
That's it. And if I can I know we're going past time, so thank you for everyone who's still locked in, and anyone watching the replay. I do want to get back to just making sure on the aspect of, with you fundraising, what would you say was the key to your success when you were raising? Because it's no small feat that you were able to raise approximately $430,000.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, for me, I was able to get into an accelerator, which gave us the credibility, and we were set up properly. All of our, due diligence folder was solid. All of our legal documents, we had a good attorney. All that was solid. Plus, at the end of the day, I had an idea that people were willing to pay money for. Like back then, our smallest size product was $240, and you know what? I sold some. So we had proof, right? Oh, so you're talking about not racing to the bottom a while ago. Like one of the things that I did is I increased my prices 50% a couple years ago. And guess what? Nobody complained.
Yeah. Because like you said, building something, and as to Seth's point, building something that people need and that people want. And then, the marketing pretty much goes for itself. But I just wanted to highlight that part of being a part of an accelerator where you were able to have that support and that push and as the word says, accelerate your process.
And not everybody can get into that though, right? So how do you raise capital without that. I mean, you see some people out here killing it in crowdfunding. I mean, that's hard. I got a good friend. This guy 6 times crushed his Kickstarter goal to start new products. I think on my blog, I got some tips about a little cheat sheet, 70 tips to crush your Kickstarter campaign. So that's the way.
70.
70, I think it's like 70
Okay.
tips. If I recall correctly, the biggest one is you got to make sure you got your people lined up in advance to support and buy the product, contribute right away. But you also got to have your PR lined up, like right up front before you launch your campaign, so you can get the word out about what you're doing. So those are just 2 things I know he talks about all the time.
Awesome. And again, thank you for that extra time, for those tips, for that valuable information. Your contact will be in our show notes. And James, thank you so much. And we look forward to bringing you back, as T said, because definitely. And thank you, Tess. There have just been so many people chiming in. Thank you, Tess.
Thank you. She went to Spelman. I went to Morehouse. My sis right there. I'm back in the day.
Nice.
Awesome.
That's what's up.
All right, James, thank you so much. And we'll connect with you again.
I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, sir. It's been amazing.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Woo, T. Another one for the book.
One for the books. Yes. Another one for the books. And just the extent, and I'm fairly deep into digital marketing. I didn't know about any of those extensions. So I learned something myself, which is always the best. That's the best thing about talking to people and sharing ideas and connecting, not only to get away from the isolation of COVID-19, but just to step your game up, because he really did drop about an easy $100,000 worth of tips and tools.
And those resources. And if you are just tuning in right now, I want to say that go back to around the 20-minute mark, 20-minute mark, where when we bring James out, of course we're great. We host the show, but I'm saying to cut through some of that, go to where James begins to tell his story about WeMontage with Trep Life Dad, his blog that he has, where he's essentially giving us access to these established experts, thought leaders, whatever other way you want to describe them, where they are sharing key nuggets that will help to accelerate your process, especially if you're starting a business or if you are seeking funds. I know that those 70 tips that James has, I was like, yeah, let's head over there and seeing that. And I think part of James's story that I definitely hope was communicated today was the fact that he put in the work and the amount of work that it takes. So that $430,000, yes, he went to an accelerator, but that is, you're in one right now, T. That is like sleepless nights. That is going above and beyond what you are currently doing in order to make sure that you maximize that experience.
No small feat. And they just pulled a slicky do on us last Tuesday. So our accelerator meets Tuesday evenings from 5:30 to 8:30, and the pitch competition was originally supposed to be June 18th. Well, they moved that up to June 11th. And so now I have a full week less to practice before I pitch. And I'm not concerned because I present well, I communicate well. It's kind of what I do. But it's like, you're just going to take a week away. But that's what they do.
And that's
in
life,
this whole
right?
process, that's life. In this whole process, they will just pop the elevator pitch on you. We'll have a guest or whatever. Because what we're doing is we're going through the Kaufman Foundation fast track entrepreneurship curriculum, which is excellent, by the way. But they'll just okay, we're doing pitches right now. And you're like, wait, what? They're like, yep, go. And so it's been quite the experience. But Chad, if you have the ability to get into one, I highly recommend it, because the proof is in the pudding. You just saw the phenom that is James Oliver Jr. And going through the process myself, I have to say that I've learned a ton.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that as well. And for those of you who have stayed with us through the entire show, thank you, Martin. Thank you, Tess. Thank you over here on the side. I see Clarissa and Ellie. Thank you, everyone. We'll be back on Thursday with another great interview, some more tech, business, and digital marketing news for your timeline. I'm Liberty White.
And I'm T. Adeola. Thank you so much for joining us.